Okay, we're up to Mishlei 12:7. Oh, and before I forget, okay, so next Monday is fine. The Monday after that is Purim. And then the Monday after that, the 13th, then I'm going to not be here. So we will, Bli Neder, have Mishlei next week, but then we'll be off for 2 weeks, and then we'll come back for at least one time until we'll see what about Pesach later. Pesach is too soon to think about, or too far to think about. Okay, so we're on Mishlei 12:7. Hafoch Resha'im ve'einam uveis tzadikim yamod. Anyone want to try?
Turn over wicked people and they're not there, or they're no longer.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and say the wicked are overturned and are no longer I think the implication is no longer there, right? Okay, but it's funny because the Metzudas Tzyon says ve'enam means ve'en mehem. There are none of them left. Okay, I guess that still works out. Okay, and then ubeis tzadikim yamod.
And the house of Tzadikim will stand.
Yep. House. I'll just go ahead and say Resha'im here. Resha'im and house of Tzadikim will stand. Okay. So the challenge tonight is going to be to try to see the Chiddush, the new idea here, because this seems very, very classic Mishlei. Okay, but we'll do our best. So far, every pasuk that we've looked at and thought that it was going to be simple has ended up yielding a novel insight. So we'll see what happens. Okay. So Metzudas Tzyon just says Einam means ein mehem. There are none of them left. I can't tell whether he's getting at something else there, because I think Einam is I don't know why he even needs to comment on that. Okay, Sadigon says Yehafchu harashaim ve'yedaru ubate hatzadikim ya'amdu. So I also, I don't know if he's saying anything different here. He says Yehafchu harashaim, the wicked are overturned. I should also mention hafach can also mean reversed. Okay, I think overturned is probably the pshat here, but I'm going to put it this here anyway. Are reversed, v'yedaru, and I guess negated. Okay, like they're not in existence. Ubate hatzadikim, but the houses of the tzadikim will stand. So he is clearer in his translation of Einam, says they're negated, and then the main difference seems to be he pluralizes the second half. So I don't know if that's significant or not. Then Targum says nishafchun rashiev lo nishtakuchun. That's strange. Uveson de tzadiki yakum. It sounds like he's saying they will not be forgotten, unless it means they will not be found. Okay, I'm going to ignore that for now because I'm not sure about it. Okay, English translations. Our scroll says the wicked are overturned and are no more, but the house of the righteous will endure. Okay, that's pretty much what we have. The Living Nach says, the wicked are overturned and are no more, but the house of the righteous endures. Okay, that's also the same. And then Alter says, overturn the wicked. That's interesting. So Alter says it as a command. Overturn the wicked, and they are gone. Okay, I think that grammatically checks out as a possible reading, but the house of the righteous will stand. Okay, so I'm going to leave his up there because that does seem to be different. Okay, what are the questions and problems? You could just say them. I think we have few enough people that I don't think we need to raise our hands right now.
So what does it mean that they're overturned or reversed?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the main question is, what does overturn, reverse mean in this context?
So why don't you say, you can go first.
Okay, maybe we do need to raise our hands.
What's the corresponding word in the first half of the pasuk to the house? I mean,
oh yeah, that's a good question. Right. Okay, so yeah, right. So what is the corresponding word in the first half to house in the second? Right. Yeah, that's a great question. I didn't spot that one.
Yeah, I was gonna say something similar just about the house. Like, why? First of all, like that, I was also thinking that.
Yeah.
But why does it say house? Like, what does the house actually represent? Like,
Right.
is it literally his house? And can we also apply that to the first half, like what your dad was saying?
Okay, right. So what does house mean in the second half? Why does it have to say it? And then what is the corresponding word in the first half to house in the second? Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and ask. I'm going to translate Alter's translation into a question here, which is: does the first word in the pasuk? Sorry, is the first word in the pasuk? Is the first word in the pasuk describing a situation or giving a command, right? In other words, this would be like when the Resha'im are overturned, or is it giving a command saying overturn the Resha'im? Because I feel like that's a huge split in terms of how we read it.
Also, in what sense are they no longer there?
Yeah, right. Okay, so in what sense are they no longer there? In what
And I
sense?
assume that means they're Resha'im, right?
Yeah. I think it has to be because they're the only subject of the pasuk so far. So in what sense are the Resha'im not there? Right.
Why do we need the play-by-play of the Resha'im? Like, just say that they are no more. Why do we have to mention the overturning before the being no more?
Well, what else would it say? Would it just say the wicked are no more?
I guess I'm just wondering, like, what is it adding? Not
Right. I mean, it seems
Yeah.
to be like that the facts of the pasuk are coming from the from that first word, that either when they are overturned, then they're no more, or you should overturn them and make them no more. But like if it just said that they are no more, I don't even think that's a sentence,
Right.
Yeah.
Also, I can understand why like the Resha'im being overturned is a negative, but I guess like why specifically is the Tzadikim's houses standing a positive thing? Like how is that good?
Okay, yeah. So let's first of all ask, what actually let's put this at the end here. So what does it mean that the house of the Tzadikim will stand? Okay, like, and then like how is that beneficial? Also, I'm going to ask this question. I'm going to convert Sadia Gaon's translation into a question here, which is, he pluralizes it. Okay, so the question is there a significance to the fact that actually I'm going to put this. I'm going to put this over here. Is there a significance to the fact that house is singular, or does it really just mean plural, like Sadia Gaon? Yeah.
Does house always mean a home, or can a house refer to a family, or
so a house can refer to a family as well. So it could either be the physical structure of the house, or it could be a family or a household, or even like like a legacy, like a lineage. Yeah, like the house of David.
So do we know in this case, or is that
No? So that'll be this question here. What does house mean? Yeah.
Also, what is the situation here? Like, are they doing anything, the Resha'im and Tzadikim, or is it just because they are Resha'im and Tzadikim?
That's a good question. Okay, so what is the situation here? Okay, it doesn't identify any decisions of the Resha'im or Tzadikim, okay, nor does it clearly state a scenario that that is happening. Right? Yeah, that's a good question.
You might say that it's overreacting to the Resha'im, because if someone is evil, you may want to stop them. You may not need to overturn or reverse them. You just want to stop the evil from happening.
So are you going, your question is going off of the thing that it's telling you to overturn them?
Okay, yeah, I guess I am. I'm just seeing if I can apply to the first one, just that the wicked are being overturned.
Okay, hold on a second. I'm just going to clarify this question. Is the first one pasuk descriptive or prescriptive, right? So is it saying they are overturned or you should overturn them? Yeah. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and just ask the obvious question, and by the obvious question I mean the question, this is obvious. Okay, is that let's say Ariel would say this is obvious. And we've seen many psukim about how the Resha'im will ultimately be destroyed and the tzadikim will flourish. What does this add? And I'm going to go ahead and just quickly skim back and just see if we can see examples of this in the previous psukim, and then I'll call on Alex after that. Unless I'm just imagining this. I mean, I know we've seen this in Mishlei. I'm just trying to look in the just the psukim we've done in the last 2.5 years. Oh, here we go. Tzadik la'olam bal yemot. A tzadik will never falter. Urushaim lo yishkenu arts, but the Resha'im will not dwell permanently in the land. Or let's see here. I feel like we had a ton of these. Yeah, Sidkas Tamim is not exactly Sidkas Tamim Tiasher Darko of Risha, so Yipol Rasha. So the righteousness of the Tamim, I know that's about the Tamim, will straighten his path, and the wicked will fall in wickedness. Sidkas Yishraim Tatilem, the righteousness of the upright will save them. Uvavus Bogdim Yilachedu, and the destructiveness of the Bogdim will ensnare them. Yeah, Tzadik Mitzara Nechlatz, the Tzadik will escape trouble. Vayavu Russia Taktav, and Russia will come in his place. So again, I mean, there's a lot of them. Yeah. All right. Whatever. You got the idea. Okay, Alex.
My question is, what exactly about the Resha'im being overturned enables the house of Tzadikim to stand? Like, if they weren't overturned, would the Tzadikim house fall?
So this is a good way to add to this first question. Okay, which is the pasuk describing okay, I guess is the pasuk referencing, it doesn't even describe it, referencing a single thing that befalls both parties, which overturns the Resha'im and reduces them to nothing. I'm typing this too long. But leaves the house of the tzaddik standing? Or does the overturning of the Resha'im result in the house of the tzaddikim standing? Is that the same question you're asking, or is that a different question? I thought it was.
Yeah, no, it's the same question.
Okay,
and,
all right, yeah.
Also, if the Resha'im weren't overturned, would that automatically mean the tzaddikim will fall?
Okay. Right. Okay. If the latter, then if the Resha'im were not overturned, does this mean that the house of the tzaddikim would not stand? It's a long, complicated question, but a good question. Okay.
Is another option to that they're just independent of each other?
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, I'll put that. Or are the two clauses independent of each other? Now, I would say that would be slightly weird, because then what are they doing in the same pasuk? But it is a possible reading. Okay, I think that's about it. So let's do this. Let me copy and paste the questions into the chat like I usually do, and then we'll have our thinking minute, and then we will see if we come up with answers. All right, let me do this in batches. Let's try batches 1 through 4. Okay, and then 5 through 9. Okay. And then I'm going to keep the psukim on the screen. Okay, so let us take a minute to think, and then we'll see what we come up with. And if you need a place to start, personally, I would say that to start with the word hafoch, of overturning, because I feel like that's the only action word we have here, really, So I feel like we need that in order to figure out even what the pasuk is talking about. Oh, sorry. I know why we didn't ask this question, but these are important questions. I'll just tack them on at the end. What are the definitions of Rasha and Tzaddik in this context? I'm going to suggest something crazy, by the way. This just occurred to me. Okay. So I've told you that the reason why we need to ask this all the time is because if you don't keep asking yourself these questions, then your own idea won't evolve. And okay, sorry. The basic reason you need to ask these questions is that sometimes the pasukim the words are used in different ways, right? So sometimes tzaddik is like a technical Mishlei definition of tzaddik. Sometimes it just means like a good person. So that's one reason you need to ask the question all the time. Second reason is because if you don't keep asking the question, then you'll just default to plugging in your definition and you won't allow it to be refined. But here, I'm going to posit something crazy, okay? Not based on any evidence, okay? What if the definitions of tzaddik and Rasha evolve as you go through Mishlei? Now, the reason why I've never thought about this is because I, kind of hold by the idea that like most of the Mefarshim say that the pasukim in Mishlei are not in any order. So like, I'm not assuming that there is a progression, so to speak, but I think the reason why I got this idea is that someone told me, I've had a hard time with Koheles. When I taught in Shahavet, I only would teach the first 3 chapters of Koheles and then the last 2 chapters because we didn't have time to learn the whole thing. And I've tried so many times to get into like the dark interior of Koheles, and I can't like find a way. But then someone like told me that there are changes in his attitude as you progress through the book. And then one of my friends, Rabbi Trachman, gave this epic shiur on Shir Shirim earlier this year in YBT. And he also said that like, it's a progression. And so it's not crazy that Mishlei would be a progression. I just don't see evidence for it, but that would be another reason why you shouldn't, why you have to ask these questions all the time, and not just in Mishlei, but like let's say like you're learning, let's say you're learning through Bereishis. There are certain concepts that you're going to encounter that maybe the Chumash is exposing you to an initial presentation of this concept so that you get one idea, and then the next time you encounter it, it's evolving that idea. It's not just like a static thing, so that's just something to be aware of for why it's important to ask this question. And I'm saying that also just because like I feel like there are questions that we ask all the time, which by the way we didn't ask here, such as who is the audience, right? And then what is the practical application? And like it can sometimes feel like we're just doing it to plug in. And even if you're just doing it to plug it in, even if it's not an organic asking of the question, it's still very important to do because otherwise you might miss an opportunity to level up your idea. So that's the little methodology lesson for the night. Okay. All right, so now let's go. I'll add those to the chat.
For the Rasha and Tzaddik thing that you were just saying,
yeah,
would it be possible to learn it with that methodology, like as we're going through now, of like one pasuk at a time, like starting somewhere in the end of Mishlei, as opposed to like going through from the beginning?
Would it be possible to? Sorry, you're saying assuming that there is a progression, then would it be possible to do it in a different order?
Yeah, I guess it wouldn't, right? Because that's what.
I would think it would not. Yeah, I guess the only thing is like this is okay, and this is another question. I'm just going to throw this other question out there. So not so much in this year, I don't think, but in my morning Mishlei Shiur, we've seen Rabbeinu Yona do weird things where in the very middle of Mishlei, like, okay, we had this thing in the middle of Mishlei. This is in my morning Mishlei Shiur in 24, what was it? 24, 5, I think. Yeah, 24:5, I think. He defines the term da'as, knowledge. Okay. Now, Mishlei has used the term da'as many times in the first 24 chapters of Mishlei, but he has like this little like beautiful explanation of it. And it just leads me to wonder, like, why is he deploying that in the middle of Mishlei? Like, shouldn't he do that in the introduction? So like, it could be that there are definitely like sequences of pasukim in Mishlei. And so even if like the whole book doesn't go in order, maybe like, there are I don't know. This is all speculation, so I'm not. It's a fair question. I would say that if the theory is correct that there's a progression, then yeah, you would have to go in order. But I just don't see the Mefarshim behaving that way, especially Rabbeinu Yona. So I'm not sure. Okay. You have a question or you have an idea?
I have an idea.
Okay, so we'll take our thinking minute, but you'll be first because I interrupted us. Okay, so let's take our thinking minute and then we'll regroup in a second. Okay, go ahead. What's your idea?
Yeah, there's been a thought that's been going through my mind this week about when bad things happen to good people.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm thinking is this: the Resha'im, you never really know whether an event that occurs is beneficial or damaging.
Right.
It may look beneficial and end
Right.
up being terrible, or may look really damaging and turn out to be terrific.
Right.
They're saying here for the Resha'im, they're talking about the consequences in absolute terms. They're overturned and they're no longer there. There's no mistaking
Mm-hmm.
that this may be something that looks bad and is actually good. Whereas for the Tzadikim, whatever is positive about their house will stand. It will not be tempered. It will not be re-examined and reversed at some later time.
Okay, so okay, I got the first step that you said, and that's good. I just want to make sure I understand the second step. That are you saying that in contrast, you're saying in general, then you can't tell whether something bad now is going to end up being good or it's going to end up being bad or vice versa. But when the Resha'im are overturned, then that's definitely a good thing. Or are you saying that when the Resha'im are overturned, then they view it in absolute terms? Like you're saying objectively, when the Resha'im are overturned, then it is.
I'm saying objectively, when the Resha'im do something or an event occurs to them,
yeah,
the consequences are going to be absolute and unmistakable.
Okay,
It'll be overturned.
so I like your starting point. I don't know if I agree with that second point, because it seems like there are many times when a group of Resha'im or when one Russia is overturned, and then the situation gets worse. You know, like if you want in the situation of like I don't know, like the first example that comes to my mind is like like, you know, I actually don't know enough of current events and history and stuff, but I feel like, you know, certain regimes, when you take out the regime, then or take out like a terrorist organization, sometimes like another group just comes in and fills the void, and that group is even worse, you know, or you depose one ruler and then it leads to like anarchy, and then that ends up being even worse, you know. So if you're saying in objective terms, I don't know if that's necessarily true. Also, I would say that the pasuk doesn't necessarily say that. It doesn't say that if you turn over Resha'im, then that's good. It's saying if you turn over Resha'im, then they no longer are there. So it's not, doesn't seem to be stating a value judgment on what happens when we overturn them. I like the initial move though, and I think that there's potential to develop that move. Okay, Rivki?
Okay, so I was thinking that like the headline in my head was about like values.
Yeah.
And specifically about like fundamental values that are true versus like values that aren't as like obviously fundamental, because the Resha'im have them. So clearly they're not, even if they, like your dad was saying, like even if it might get them to point B from point A, like at the end of the day, they're not going to get to point C. They're going to end up back at point A.
Okay.
So I was thinking not only this about values, but I was thinking about it in terms of like parenting. I don't know if that's too specific, but I was just thinking like it does say like bias. And I like that he doesn't say it in the first half. And I was thinking that maybe we can say that because it doesn't say it in the first half, that like he's dafka saying, yeah, like there isn't a household. So like clearly like there's not even a mention of it. So what I was thinking for like the actual practical decision making was that kind of like how I was saying, like the foundations and the fundamentals are there. And then like you can be a tzaddik or a rasha and you can tap into those fundamentals and understand that like if you have a good understanding of the system that's around you and you understand that at the end of the day, even if you don't agree with every single one of the fundamentals like fully, they are going to make you have a more like long lasting household for yourself and then for your kids and then so on, and then your community, because if you have like a strong house, then that will affect your community. And then on the other side, that if you don't tap into those values and you don't understand why they're good, then eventually it's not going to be there anymore. And I was thinking, like, I think it's a really good mashal, and I also recommend this podcast. It was actually one of the ones you were on, like the Judaism Demystified one.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I think it was that one. And it was the title of the podcast was my Nazi father and my Jewish soul, something like that. And it reminded me, it was really good. Highly recommend.
Okay.
So basically the idea of the whole thing was that there was this German guy and he grew up like not really knowing anything about the war because it was like right after the war. So like none of the Germans really like spoke about it until they were a little older and they were educated in school. And he ended up finding out that his dad was literally a Nazi and like he had like pictures with Hitler. And so I was thinking like that this guy ended up converting and now he lives in Israel. So I was thinking like clearly in the world, like there are fundamental ideas that are true. And as long as you're able to tap into them and then like instill them into your kids and the people around you, then you'll have that foundation. And if not, then it won't be there.
Okay. So here's my experience hearing your idea. Okay. I feel like I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but like someone is trying to point out to you a constellation and like, okay, you see like that star and that star and that star. And you're like, okay, I see like a couple of them. And are you talking about this image or that image? You know, like I feel like I see some of the stars. So what I want to do is I want to talk out the stars that are the brightest. And then it's possible that like I'm seeing a direction and I don't know if it's what you're saying or if these are two different ideas, that constellations that use the same stars. Okay. So
I understand. Yeah.
Okay, so I just made that up on the spot, but that's how I felt. Okay, but so star number one is I like the inference you're making from the word household, because I think household does often mean legacy, and I think that even though it could be like a legacy in terms of wealth, I think legacy in terms of like offspring is reasonable to assume. And in fact, I think we had that fairly recently. I just want to check. Oh no, we had the root. The root of the tzadikim will not falter. Oh, that's why this puzzle sounds so familiar. This is very similar to Gimel. No man will be established in wickedness, but the root of the tzadikim will not budge. And I think that some of them said that was about their children. Okay, so but household definitely means children. I don't think I need to like prove that. Okay, and the fact that it doesn't say that about the Resha'im means that that they won't have that phenomenon, that they're not going to have a lasting legacy of like people carrying on their way of life. Okay, so that's one thing I like. Okay, second thing is the thing you were saying about tapping into these like universal values. I think that's very consistent with the definition of tzaddik that we've developed, which is that you know the tzaddik is not building, the tzaddikim don't build their life around particular things or particular circumstances. They build their life around the principles, and the principles that stem from like what human beings actually are and what their actual needs are and how to like best get good for human beings. You know, like it's not about, you know, like there are certain okay, I'll just give this example because like you know, it's not fresh in my mind anymore, but like, you know, when I went to the Crow reservation over the summer, you know, then like the Crows' whole lifestyle revolved around the particulars of like buffalo hunting and like intertribal warfare. And that was very nice as long as they kept those. But then once those particulars were taken away, the entire thing fell apart. And now like there's no bias, you know, there's no house of the Crows. It's just the kids have no connection to their parents. So, but tzaddikim are not like that. They're really helping individual human beings flourish. And that can happen like, you know, in many, many different particulars, in many scenarios. So they're tapping into that. Whereas the Resha'im, okay, and this is where we need to fill it in. The Resha'im don't or can't do that. And the question is, why not? Okay, that's one like question mark I have. Second is I need a clear idea of what it means that they are overturned, or that you should overturn them. But I like this this structure so far. There's one more point that I liked. Hold on. Maybe we had to do with the Nazi thing. So the thing I like about the Nazi thing also is that it shows that that might be a clue in terms of the audience of the pasuk about the ability to like jump ship from the Russia value system and like attach yourself to the tzaddik before it's too late or something like that. That's not as major of a point, but I think it is a nice point. Okay, so yeah, so can we develop this? So we have a very strong second half, okay, and we have like an outline of a first half, but the question is, can we get it more specific? Hafok Resha'im ve'enam. They're overturned and they're no more. And I think my intuition is still very strong here, that I think the key to this pasuk is going to be in hafok, in overturning, which either means overturning or reversal. Yeah, Alex.
Could it be that in this context it's saying that you should like work to help Resha'im like change their values so they could be good people too?
So, it's interesting. I'll give you one proof for this, and then I'll tell you why the proof is not the best proof, but it is a proof. Like, it's an actual proof. I don't mean it's not the best. You'll see what I mean. So, I already gave away the answer. I'll ask the question in case someone wasn't paying attention. Okay, so the job of the prophets of the Nevi'im is to get people to do tshuva, right? And most of the, and we had many prophets, even more than the ones that are written. So what is the only case where prophets go to people and say to do tshuva and then they actually do tshuva?
Is it Yona?
Yona. Okay, right? So like, the only case that we have where prophets go to an entire group of people and they say, do tshuva, and they actually do it, and then they're saved, is Sefer Yona. Okay, and that's not even Jews. That's the barbaric Assyrians. So so I want to read the thing here. So Yona is instructed to tell to Vayacho Yona lavo ba'ir mahalach yom echad. So Yona goes into the city of Nineveh a day's journey. Vayukra, and he called out Vayomar, and he says, Od arba'im yom v'Nineveh nehapaches. 40 more days and Nineveh will be overturned. Okay, so so we have a rule, or we know a rule of how God operates, that if you have a nevuah for bad, then if you do tshuva, it'll get overturned. Okay, but I think the Malbim explains that the people of Nineveh obviously don't know how nevuah works, and they did believe Yona. Why they believe Yona is another question. So there was a danger that if Yona said he just says in 40 days you guys will be destroyed. So if they did tshuva and then they got saved, then there's a danger that they might think that like he's a false navi, because he said they're going to get destroyed. So I think it's the Malbim where the Rav works out this whole thing that nehapaches could either mean to be overturned or transformed. And the reason why Yona used that language was because he's telling you guys are going to be nehapaches within 40 days. And that is going to come true no matter what. But either it's going to mean you will be overturned, like your city will be like, destroyed, or you will be transformed. So so the word is used for transformation of like character. So that's the sense in which it's a good proof for what Alex is saying. The bad proof, not the bad proof. The reason why I'm not sure if I accept this is because the Russia is not an audience that Mishlei talks to, because Resha'im typically don't change. Now you could say that this is an exception, and you could say that like when it says Hafok Resha'im ve'enam, Alex, I assume you're reading it like transform the wicked and they will be no more, because they're not going to be wicked anymore. Is that the way you want to read it?
I mean, I was asking if that's a possible reading, but yeah.
No, it is a possible reading in terms of the words. And it might even be a possible reading in terms of the idea. I have resistance because it doesn't seem like something Mishlei would say, but let's explore it and see what happens. Actually, yeah, hold on a second. I just forgot that we were in the middle of, are you saying that as its own idea, or are you saying that to like address what Rivki was saying?
I think at first I was saying it to address that, but like it could be a toad idea.
Okay.
Like
Yeah, 'cause I don't wanna
like
lose-
it branches off even more.
Yeah, I don't want to lose the trail of thought of Rivki's because the intuition's still hot on that one in my mind. So let's just table that other reading for a second, and let's assume that hafok means to be overturned in like a destruction way, and then enam in a in that they're not there anymore, like they are destroyed. Yeah, Ayala?
I don't know if this is such a chiddush at all, but maybe the Rishon being overturned is like if there's a group of Risha or a Rasha,
Yeah.
or a group of Rishon, they're like what they're trying to do is kind of like promote their own power, like put their own ideas and values onto society and like warp society into what they want it to be
Right.
in order to like get their own power. So once maybe I don't know if this is like advice to overturn them or like once they are overturned, meaning like completely like knocking them out of power, then like each Russia is kind of his own, like creating his own framework and wanting himself in power. So like this Russia is going to be completely gone and like there's no trace of him after he's knocked out.
Right. Okay. All right. So that's a good idea. And I also don't know if that's going to lead to an idea, but let's just say it anyway and refine it. So tzadikim really are working for the flourishing of the system. Resha'im are working for the success of the self. So if a tzaddik were to be overturned, it's not going to destroy the thing that the tzaddik is all about, and probably it's not even going to like permanently stunt the system, because whatever he did, there's going to be a remnant of that, in some way. Like in others, a particular tzaddik being overturned is not going to destroy the whole system. You have, Avraham Avinu died, right? But he had started a system, or like a particular, you could even have like a Jewish community that is destroyed, but it doesn't destroy Judaism. But you have a Russia who is, like glorifying himself, and when that Russia dies, then like to the extent that the Russia succeeded, quote unquote, in like building a self-glorification system around him, when he's gone, the whole thing is gone. There will be pieces that maybe could be picked up and used by the Resha'im, but he himself is totally gone. Like if I don't know, like if the Kim dynasty in North Korea, if Kim Jong-un is going to be assassinated, it's not like, oh, we're going to keep Kim religion going. Like, no, the whole thing is just gone. Like, yeah, that's good. Yeah, Alex, you want to add to that?
I was thinking about the idea of like familial lines and legacies, and jumping off of that with the idea of if it is in context, like changing the ways of the Resha'im, could it be potentially that it's advice for dealing with like a wicked child or someone in your community specifically who's wicked, where you should work to like change their ways? That way the lineage and like house of like the values of tzaddikim will go on, because then they'll like change their ways and then go into like the kind of better fold, so to speak.
Okay, I don't mean to put you on hold twice, because that is with your idea of hafok meaning transformation, not destruction. Then I want to just hold off until we just explore this idea a little bit more. Okay.
But what? Okay. Okay.
I mean, unless I'm
advocate
misunderstanding you, because it sounds like you're talking about like taking the Resha'im and like putting them on a good path, not annihilating them. Like, yeah.
I'd like to argue that on some level, because it's like, what is transformation if not a destruction of a past self? So
let me phrase it a different way. I'm talking about like you kill the person, okay, and you're not talking about killing the person, right?
No, I am.
Okay, all right. So let's. I think there's a lot of potential in those ideas. What I want to do is like this. I want to read Rav Hirsch, okay, because I think Rav Hirsch is along the lines that we're taking right now with both what Rivki is saying and Ayala is saying, and like this intuition here. And this is a good example, by the way. I know I've been like trying to like push Rav Hirsch. I still haven't used him a lot, but this is like what I like about Rav Hirsch in Chumash is going to be evident in what he says here. Okay, like it's a very like Hirschian explanation. Okay, here's what he says, and we've got multiple paragraphs here. Oh, I forgot to actually write down his translation of the pasuk. I meant to do that. Let me see how he translates it. 12:7, which is on page 26. So he translates our pasuk as, so he also does it as a directive. So he translates it as, hold on, overthrow the wicked, and they are no longer, but the house of the righteous will stand. Okay, so kind of like altar. So here's what he says. When the lawless lose their fortunes and fall from the proud pinnacle on which their fortune stands, nothing remains of them. The sum of such a man's own person plus his fortune comprise a grand total of superficialities. As soon as these facades have collapsed, such people themselves become buried under the ruins. Okay, so that's like, I think that's consistent with what we were saying about Resha'im building up their own self as a system. For the righteous man, however, all externals are only means toward the one end which he never loses sight of. Home to him is not represented by the measure of comfort with which his house was built and is now maintained. To him, home denotes striving and accomplishing aims favorable in God's eyes, through the means granted him and the human beings entrusted into his care. His circumstances may change, his prosperity may vanish, but his task always remains the same. Those of God's demands which he has already fulfilled will never be lost. They are his into eternity. In adversity, it only remains for him to prove, serene and undaunted, that his family and his family's faithfulness and striving toward God are unshaken, even though his fortunes have turned and the circumstances of his life have changed. His home remains. In truth, while the lawless collapses when his fortune is doomed, the righteous man retains his confidence even in death, for his existence and his accomplishments go beyond the span of his sojourn upon earth. Isn't that a beautiful interpretation? And I think it's very consistent with what we've been saying, maybe some slight nuances in the emphases here. But the idea is that the Russia is devoting his whole existence to just this facade, really, just this image of power, and all of his everything is channeled into that. I was talking to someone who recently, a friend of mine, whose company was changing hands. The company he worked for was changing hands. A major other company invested $100 million into this company to make it a nationwide thing. Okay. And so obviously everyone in the company was excited. And then, like, I don't know how long later, this scandal broke that there was some sort of criminal dealing being involved in the head of the company, like actual, like real, like intentional breach of ethics. And the entire thing went bankrupt, and all the $100 million is gone. And the entire company is now just like completely like gone, you know? To me, like, that's an example of like what the type of damage that Russia can do, because all of those resources, which could have been going to like establishing not permanently lasting, to like setting up like systems that do good, were just funneled into this person's own ambition for his own like self-glorification. And when he goes down, everything goes down with him, you know? And you know, I don't know if you saw this. I was looking what was I saying? Right before, while I was waiting for people to come on, I just typed in like descendants of bad guys. So I just found this, what actually happened to the offspring of history's most nefarious figures. So if you go through them, you got like Goering's great niece. Okay, fine. Pol Pot's daughter, you know. So you have some of these people who basically like followed after their wicked parents, but like, you know, a lot of them even if they followed after the philosophy of their parents, they did not succeed in continuing the legacy, you know. Yeah, so anyway, you can look that up on your own. Yeah, Rookie, you want to add to that?
Yeah, like not like a fetish, but I was thinking that like that is very similar to what I was trying to like point to.
I think so also. Yeah,
just because I think like that idea, like why are the Resha'im not there anymore? And I like that idea of that, the fundamental values, because I feel like it makes it easier to continue in doing the thing that you're doing when that thing isn't necessarily quote unquote working in that moment. And that's like, seems like what Rav Hirsch was saying.
Yeah.
And I think like it's a direct result of you're putting your, I guess, like, you know, money or whatever, not money, but like you're putting your trust in something that's tried and true versus not, and then you get those different results. Like
exactly.
It's very fact.
And let's use I'm going to use kind of a morbid example. Okay, like let's use an Ashes Chayil, okay, who we know Ashes Chayil is just a like the model of a Mishleic person, and Shlomo portrays her as being in the household. Okay, so let's say you have cases like this where I'm sure you had in Nazi Germany, you had Ashes Chayils, whether they were women or men, that lost their entire family. Like let's say they had an entire family, an entire business, an entire community life, and they lost it. Everyone was killed and it was taken away from them. So the fact that they are an Ashes Chayil and they still have those values, they even though it's hard and it's going to, I'm not trying to minimize like the achievement of this, they will go and they will start a new family, find a new community. Even if they didn't start a new family, they will become, let's say she was an Ashes Chayil in having a family and her family is gone and she can't start a new family, she'll become an Ashes Chayil in business. She'll become an Ashes Chayil in serving the community. She'll become an Ashes Chayil in writing. She'll become, the values of justice don't change, even though the particular expressions of it do change. So you can't destroy, that is the essence of the house of the tzaddik, and you can't destroy that, because that's who they are. But with Russia, they lose that particular thing and then bam, it's all gone. Ella?
This also reminds me of Kohelet when he's talking about like money, and like even if you collect and accumulate tons of money, like your children won't be able to, like you don't know what happens after you die.
Exactly right. Whereas here's the thing is that like, the way Kohelet expresses it is like you can have all this money and then you pass it on to your kid and then your kid loses it. So if you are a tzaddik and you instill the values of like tzedakah, let's say, right, and you raise your kids with that value, so even if they lose the money, they have the value of the tzedakah, like that is going to continue to perpetuate itself. Yeah, Rivki?
Yeah, I was going to say something very similar to what you just said, and I liked like also to connect this to what I was saying, like about the household, that if you raise your kids with those values truly, because I feel like, I'm not saying every single tzaddik has always had a kid who like followed in that path. Right. Yeah. I feel like the ratio to like tzaddikim who had kids versus Resha'im who had kids, I would assume, just because of like I was saying about the fundamentals of the world, that more tzaddikim's families stayed on like a positive path versus Resha'im. Like
I would assume that as well. Yeah. I want to give an example because this is actually I want to do two things. I want to read Rabbeinu Yona, who might not be saying the same idea, but I do think it is expressed well. And then I'm going to give an example, and then we'll try to explore the approach that Alex is suggesting. So Rabbeinu Yona, very, very short pasuk here. So he says, Hine shnei psukim asher lamala mizeh tam la'asher amar ata. So he says the two psukim before this are a reason or an explanation of our pasuk. So let's just review the last two psukim. So the previous two ones were Machshavah Tzadikim Mishpat Takbulos Resha'im Mirma. The plans of Tzadikim are justice, and the strategies of the Resha'im are deceit. Divrei Resha'im Erev Dam Ufi Yesha'im Yatzilem. The words of Resha'im are lurk in ambush for blood, but the mouth of the upright will save them. And then we have our pasuk. So he says, Hafok Resha'im ve'inam. Overturn the Resha'im and they will no longer be there. Kiyesh lahamin al Resha'im. We should believe that about the Resha'im, she'acharisam ade oved, that their destiny is utter destruction. V'nafsham lakala, and their souls will be destroyed. V'necharetza, and will be like eliminated. Kihema machisim. Here's the part I like. Kihema machisim besichlam uvugufam. They anger God with their intellects and with their bodies. Kasher Amar, as it says, Takbulas Resha'im Mirma, the strategies of the Resha'im are deceit. V'divrei Resha'im Erev Dam, and the words of the Resha'im lurk for blood. So I guess that first pasuk of the strategies are deceit, I guess, is in their mind, and then the words for ambushing for blood are like for harming others. V'achrei kol zos halo l'cha ladas ki hafech Hashem Yisrael es haresha'im ve'inam od ki yichalu kilion b'cheretz. And you should know that God will destroy the Resha'im and they will no longer be there because they will they'll utterly perish. Now you could read Rabbeinu Yona in a way that he's talking about like hashgacha pratis and God like divinely punishing them. But given what we see from Mishlei, it's not saying. I don't think you even need to say that. You just have to say God structured human beings and structured the world in a way where if you corrupt your intellect and you use it to fuel like fantasy-based plots of self-promotion, and you then use your Tselem Elokim to make decisions that just abuse all the people around you and sap all the resources, you will meet your utter end. Like reality, you will smash against reality. It cannot be sustained, you know? So again, it could be Revenius getting another idea, but I think it's consistent. And the example I wanted to give of this is, again, I said this in the sheer description, Haman versus Esther, okay? So you can say Mordecai also, but I want to use Esther. So I was associating this because of the word hafoch, you know, of Purim word of nahafochu, and then the house of the tzaddikim lasting, whereas the Resha'im are no longer there and they don't even last. So you look at Haman, who had extreme wealth and lots of kids and family and power, right? But he, you know, was Russia in the sense that he just, all he wanted was self-promotion. That led him to make these egotistical, you know, decisions and to have these blind spots. And then it eventually ended up costing him his life. Now, Esther and Mordecai, they did actions, each of them did actions that from the perspective of the Russia seemed like reckless self-endangerment, right? Like Mordecai doesn't bow down to Haman, according to Chazal, because of Avodah Zarah, and he's just saying, I don't compromise this value. And then Esther used her chachma, but it did involve risking her life from the king, but she relied on her chachma to do that, you know? And that ended up saving everyone. And what is their legacy? So the interesting thing, and the reason why I wanted to mention Esther is that, you know, let's talk about offspring, okay? What happened to Esther's offspring?
Us, technically? I mean,
No.
not technically.
No, in fact, not.
Really?
Esther had, let me just check my little, hold on. I forgot which of my books it's in. I think it's in the, my Chagai, Zachariah, and Malachi. Yeah. So Esther. Oh, is this it? Hold on. I can't find it. So I mean, it's a tragedy. You know, Esther has a child with Achashverosh, and then he becomes a king. You know, and then, you know, that line dies out. I mean, you know, like the Persians are no longer around, you know, but what is Esther's real legacy? You know, and so, and you got to imagine, I mean, we forget about the fact Esther lives the rest of her life married to Achashverosh, like it's not happy, you know, but Esther was Neshes Chayil. Her real tzaddikus contribution was saving the Jewish people, and then memorializing all these ideas in Purim and pushing for the Sanhedrin to like you know, start the you know, to establish the holiday of Purim, and that's her real legacy, you know, and like that lasts. And Haman, who put all of his energy into this material legacy of self-glorification, is gone, you know. So I can't help but think of that here because it's a good illustration of this. Okay, so let's just sum this up, and then we'll go to Alex's idea. And I want to try to sum it up in a way that is like, I'm feeling that there are nuances here, but I can't yet articulate them. Okay, so this is the let's just call this idea number one, which was like a lot of us contributing to this. Yeah, whatever. All right, we'll attribute to Rav Hirsch. Okay, okay, because he wrote it so nicely, right? So the idea here is that because the Resha'im are exclusively focused on building building up themselves and only themselves to the exclusion of everything and everyone else. Once they fall, they're done, right? Their only legacy was in themselves and will die with them. Okay. In contrast, the tzaddikim focus on facilitating the flourishing of the systems and people around them, and including themselves, their own development as a part of that system. So even if they suffer, here's the point, an overturning, okay, it will not destroy their true legacy, which is their righteousness, which will their righteousness. They will simply go on and continue developing and facilitating righteousness elsewhere. So the chiddush of the pasuk here is, I still think the key is in the word overturning, that an overturning means you lose everything about your material situation. Okay, that's an overturning. And the fact that the Russia can be overturned and is not there shows that the only thing he had was the stuff that was there. The fact that you can overturn the tzadikim and they still have a house means that their house was not what was there. I think that's the clear idea. That one I have to write out. Hold on, I just don't want to forget this. Okay, overturn equals complete eradication of all material success. The fact that the Russia is overturned and is no longer there shows that material success was all he had. The fact that the tzaddik can experience overturning and still have a house shows that his real house, i.e. legacy, is the righteous values he supports and promotes. Yeah, Ayala?
Can you say, based off of this, that like a practical implication or whatever is, besides for just like the Russia or the tzaddik, but for anyone who's somewhere in the middle, of like recognize that their actions, whether they fall in the, like recognize that this is what will happen with their actions if they fall in the like tzidkus or rishus camp,
Yeah,
and then
I
like
think so.
have this as a motivation.
Yeah, I think that this would be a good place to apply our pattern we've seen of Mishlei talking to a person who's tempted to go down either path. And everyone, I do think that everyone does want a legacy, and they want it for different reasons. You know, the Russia wants it for self-glorification and for the immortality fantasy. The tzaddik wants it because he wants what he's doing, which is good, to last. You want the good to last, you know, even in yourself. And it's saying that you know the type of legacy that the Russia is going to get is on shaky basis and won't last, and the type that the tzaddik gets will last. And for the person who is not yet a tzaddik, he wants the glory of the legacy as well, and he can get that. But by the time he actually gets there, he doesn't want the glory anymore because he's you know, he'll be a tzaddik. Yeah. My dad has a point now.
So I've been thinking about the various documentaries and docudramas about the great, I'm blocking on the name, the great con artist who
Bernie Madoff?
Madoff.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just that he lost all his material success. He had a son that committed suicide. He had a wife that deserted him. You know, there's no one, if you're the Russia, there's no one to bail you out because you've screwed everyone.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's a good example because even his family, like you know, he's even going to hurt his own family. Yeah. Okay. Rivki.
This is like an in between of like what we were saying and then Alex's idea.
Okay. We'll bridge.
I guess be under like her idea, but I was thinking that in terms of like the transformation and also the household, I don't know how much I would say I agree with like the Russia turning into a tzaddik and like that's transformation. But I wonder if we could also say that it's not talking about the Russia. It could be talking about the Russia's kids.
Okay. That's a good inroad.
Like the entire pasuk is speaking about legacy and household and children. Right. So you can say that once the Russia's kids realize that their parents fundamental ideas were literally nothing, then they could be like, oh, well, like kind of like the Nazi story, like, well, this clearly was wrong. So then what is right? And then that's where the transformation could take place.
Right. Okay, so let's try reading the pasuk through that lens or through these other lenses that Alex was saying. Alex, if you want to jump in and say anything that you've been thinking in the interim, then feel free. I'm just thinking this through now. So we still have to take a stance, I think, at some point on, is this instructing us to overturn them, or is it saying when they are overturned, they will no longer be there?
Well, I think if you were going the route of like changing the Russia, it would be more of a like active thing where you're being told to change them.
Right. Okay. I think that's a good read. Okay. So overturn the wicked and they're gone. Yeah. Yeah. Just to respond to what Rivki was saying, I like your idea, Rivki, but I feel like it's hard to read into the pasuk right now, at least. Overturn the Resha'im and they're gone. And then you kind of have to say that the pasuk is implying, and the house of the Tzadikim will stand, and that's where the children of the Resha'im will go. Like I feel like it's, I have a hard time like seeing that being expressed here.
Well, I think I definitely hear what you're saying, but maybe like the reason why the house of the Resha'im doesn't stand is because their kids, meaning like obviously not every single case, but I feel like it is because their kids know that their values are incorrect. So then that would lead them to understanding that if that was wrong, then search for what's right, kind of like Abraham.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. That definitely happens in certain cases, like the Nazi story you mentioned, but I don't know if that's the case in a lot of, I feel like there's a lot of KKK people who like raise their kids to be KKK, and it's like
then you're questioning the pasuk then, no? Like it's not like the idea.
Well, I'm questioning Alex's interpretation of it. Right. Yeah. And that was my initial problem, right? Is that, here's what I want to do. Let me just skim the Mefarshim and just see if anyone takes Hafok in that way. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm not going to read them out loud because that would not be skimming. I'm just moving through here. Yeah, so all of the Mefarshim say that it means to destroy. Now, that doesn't mean that what Alex is saying is impossible. It just means that no one learned it that way. And that combined with, I'm open to an idea if we have it, but a lot of problems.
Really, it's on me for being too kumbaya on my attitude today.
That's okay. Look, we got to have creative, creative readings. To get creative ideas. Let's just see if there's one more idea that we can do. I want to do this. I think we alluded to this last time. Hold on, let me just see if this is going to play out. No, that's not going to play out. Yeah, see, a lot of these Mefarshim are saying the same thing. Like I'll read the Rambam. Hashem Yis'ala Yahafok Resha'im ve'inam. God will overturn the Resha'im and they will no longer be there. B'ma'adzman in a very short time. Ve'ulam tzadikim him behefechzeh. But the tzadikim will be the opposite. Ki be'isam yamod v'yiskayim. Their household will stand and last. V'hu zaram, and that's their offspring. Ve'in tzarach lomar shehim ba'atzmam yamdu. And needless to say, they themselves will last v'yiskayim and they'll be established. Ki gam zaram yamod v'yiskayim. But also their offspring will. It says in, I think that's Tehillim, I've never seen a tzaddik abandon and his children begging for bread. Or the Radak says, there's no lasting, the Resha'im don't last because they will be destroyed immediately. You will like contemplate his place and he won't be there. They will be established because they built their houses on righteousness. Hoil Moshe says, Sivoy al mishkal zachor es yom hashabbos. It's a command. Umdaber ima kore al derech boacha ashura. Okay. When the Resha'im themselves are overturned, then their houses will be overturned. That's actually like the Bernie Madoff example. That's saying that's actually a good way to read the absence of the word house in the first one. When the Resha'im are overturned, then their houses are no longer there because they bring down their houses with them. Same thing with Haman, right? As he got killed, and then as a result of that, his sons, got hanged. Tzadikim gam im b'gzeres hakel yihafchuhem Besam Yamod. Oh, interesting. And the tzaddikim, even if they get overturned in the decree of God, their houses will stand. So that's another good idea, which is take a Rabbi Akiva, right? So Rabbi Akiva was righteous, but he was in a time of a bad decree, and he got overturned, right? He got killed. He got killed horribly, but the legacy and the values and the ideas of Rabbi Akiva lived on, or take like, even outside of Judaism, take Socrates, right? Socrates was put to death for philosophy, but the Socratic philosophy is still alive and well today and like influenced the entire world, and so that is so that's like a source of, I don't think that's for the average Mishlei audience, but I think that is, first of all, I think that's important for the tzaddik, because I think, tzaddikim are human beings also, and it could be discouraging for a tzaddik to like, not like to think that he's going to be, that everything he lived his life for is not going to last, and that's why like Avram Avinu was so distressed when he didn't have a offspring, so like it could be encouraging for the tzaddikim, and also I think this is good for people who are disturbed by the deaths of tzaddikim. Not that this answers all the questions, because this is not Mishlei's job, but like, the no one lives forever. Okay. Arguably Eliyahu Navi. Okay, but that's a machlokas. But so no one's gonna live forever. But the thing that the tzaddik's life was about was his righteousness and the ideas, and that does last beyond him, and I think that is a certain I don't know if comfort's the right word, but that is a certain perspective to have on like, on when there is a death of a tzaddik. Yeah, Rivki?
Yeah, I don't remember at what point, but there was some point this year, and you just reminded me that this pasuk for some reason is giving me like very big EO vibes. Like I feel like
right.
a very like, connected idea to that whole spiel, whatever you want to call it. Because it really is like about like your mindset and what you actually believe in, even
right.
Like you have boils and all your kids are dead and you're
Eov did lose everything, right?
And then you see like it's still at the end of the day, like he knew what the right choice was.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. I think that is it. I mean, the Mefarshim are oddly unified here. Again, except maybe Revina and Yona, who's talking about God punishing them. I'll just read one last one. The Meiri connects to the last three pasukim. So he says, he says the external ideas are simple. Okay, Yomar Shetzadik lo dai shlo. So this is explaining now the thoughts of the plans of tzaddikim are justice, the strategies of the Resha'im are deceit. He says, Yomar Shetzadik lo dai shlo yaseh ma'aseh ra. It's not only that the tzaddik will not do injustice, ela af b'machshavto lo yitzayer shum davar ra. Even in his thoughts, his plans, he will not, fabricate. He will not come up with something evil. All of his thoughts are justice and righteousness. But the Russia prepares all of his all of his plots for evil. And he strives to enact them in strategies and deceptions. All of their words are to ambush for blood. In any way that they can. Upi Resha'im, and the mouth of the upright, if you take advice from the Yashar, you can save them. That was what we said, like you should have a Yashar body. To the point where God will overturn the Resha'im and they will not be there. He'll do it immediately. Or in their time. Sometimes Lashatan means immediately, sometimes it's in their time. So he doesn't even explain it. All right. So this was one that was more simple, but I still feel like it was a nice idea, even if the core idea was similar to what we've had before. Okay, short cheer tonight. Let's do something we haven't done in a long time. I'm gonna end Shiur, and then we'll have a quick if there's a, I don't know if there's any Mishlei after party comments or questions that you want to have. I mean, usually it's a bigger group, but I'm gonna go ahead and stop the Shiur now.